Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome all of you to our workshop today, Franchise One-on-One, starting a business through a franchise. And I would like to welcome our partner today, Roanoke SBDC, and we have Heather joining from SBDC. And go. So this is the first one that we are bringing in our network, which is about all about the franchise and how to start a business through a franchise. And if you are in business and you want to convert into the franchising, all nuts and bolts will be answered here. And today I would now like to introduce our speaker. We are so glad that we have connected Heather Rosen. She is a president of FranNet of Virginia and DC, a franchise advisory and development services firm with 50 plus offices in North America. She is also an attorney who previously advised small and mid-sized businesses. In 2001, Heather moved to Washington, D.C. To work as an in-house consultant for a large law firm. Later in 2009, she joined FranNet of Virginia. For past 12 years, she has been a primary authority of franchising in DC metro area for SCORE SBDC, Women Business Center, and now we can say for Virginia Department of Small Business Supplier Diversity also. Heather teaches these workshops on regular basis. She is also a co-author of 2016 book, More Than Just French Fries, 15 Businesses Through Leader Share Insight on Franchising Success. So she's a wealth of knowledge, and we are so grateful that we have an opportunity to hear from her. And now I would like to ask Heather from SBDC to introduce her and welcome you all.
Thank you so much, Romain, and thank you for the ongoing opportunity to collaborate with the Virginia Department of Supplier Diversity. As Romain said, my name is Heather Fay, and I am the Regional Program Director and the Botetourt Advisor from the Roanoke Regional Small Business Development Center. And on behalf of my colleagues, just want to wish you a warm welcome, and we thank you again for Heather Rosen for sharing her knowledge and expertise with us. I'm excited I have your book on my list of things to read. And the SBDC is a resource partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration. So our center serves the greater Roanoke Valley, the New River Valley, and Allegheny Highlands in Franklin County. And there's SBDC scattered. There's 27 different centers across the state of Virginia. So we just appreciate your time today, and I will turn it back over to you, Romain. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Now, Heather, stage is yours. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I'm really pleased to be here and to share with you. We have a lot of information to go through. As I said earlier, we're going to be together for a little less than 2 hours now. But there's a lot that I learned. I'm going to tell you about myself, but everybody starts somewhere. And for me, I was, as Romain said, I was a lawyer. I was really good at researching and advising and problem solving. And I got to the point in my career, here's my slide, where it really made sense for me. This was during the last recession, and I was sort of thinking about how to, what to do next in my professional career. And I was lucky enough to know some people who advised others on starting businesses. And so I started talking to them, and I thought, I've run a department, I've led people, I've advised clients. There's probably a lot of things that I'm qualified to do, but the reality is that I'm making a pretty decent salary. While I would love to be a business owner, I mean, the reality is that my household relies on my salary and I've got benefits. And so if I'm going to do something, I've got to really know that it's going to work. And it can't just be, you know, a hobby that I really like. It can't just be, I'm going to start a coaching or consulting practice. It's got to be something where I can verify that people actually make money and enough money doing this kind of work. And so I did my research, and the process that I went through was actually very similar to the process that people go through that I coach to try to figure out what the business is. And, you know, as Romaine was saying, you know, I co-authored this book. I actually write every week a newsletter, almost every week, a newsletter with a thought leadership piece about things that I've learned kind of along the way after seeing so many different business models and running my own business. And so I'm going to provide a link at the end if anybody wants to join the newsletter list to read these every week. People seem to like them. You'll have an opportunity to do that at the end. One other or two other housekeeping items before I get into the program. Let me post this here. There's an evaluation form that I have that I'm gonna post it right now. If you, we'd love to get your feedback. We want to know what you're interested in that we might not be covering because we're going to be doing some more programs together. But also, if you would like a copy of this recording, there's a button at the end that you can click at the end of the evaluation to request the recording. I'm going to be monitoring the chat box. So if you have questions or if I ask a question you want to answer, I probably will miss something you put in Q&A, but if you put it in chat, I will see it. So last housekeeping item, I work, you know, as I said to you, this is a business. My business as an advisor is a business, but we don't charge anything for our services because the franchises out there view me as a recruiter. So if you've ever worked with a recruiter, they're searching for the next great VP, director, et cetera, for the company. The candidate doesn't pay the recruiter. The company pays because the company really values the, you know, the knowledge and screening services that the recruiter has led them to bring them this great candidate. And that's really how I get paid. So people never pay me ever. They don't even pay more if they go into business through a franchise. So I let you know this because if you have anything that we can answer for you, there's no catch. There's literally nothing that you will be charged for. Please, please don't be shy about that. And I work through a company called FranNet. They're the ones that bill the franchises, but they also are my source of information because the reality is if you're going to be somebody who is a consultant on franchises, you better know what's happening today in the industry. I mean, there are thousands of businesses out there and they are my source of current information on what's happening in the franchise world. So here are the topics that I'm going to cover today. And I know somebody had asked about whether I'm going to talk about turning a business into a franchise or launching a franchise division. I'm going to briefly touch on it, but that's actually a separate program that if there's enough interest, we can do another discussion on that. And if you're interested in that and you need more than I cover today, please put that in the evaluation form as well. But what my main topics today are going to be, you know, when should you think about business ownership? When does it make sense to go into business through a franchise versus another way? There's certainly a lot of myths. People think they know about franchises, which I'm gonna bust in most cases. The whole idea of going into business through a franchise is to go into business with certainty, to go into business knowing that if you do the things that they train you to do, you will make money. But unfortunately, I mean, not every franchise is as good as another franchise. So I'm going to talk about some things that you'd really need to do to minimize risk other than just going into business through a franchise. The other side of the coin is minimizing, or I'm sorry, maximizing return on investment. I get a lot of questions about, mostly when people ask me about franchises, they want to know about restaurants, because this is what most people are familiar with when they think of franchising. But restaurants are the second most expensive type of franchise. And so most of the time, nothing wrong with restaurants, but I would say that you should at least consider whether the money that you're investing in the restaurant could be, you get a better return on a different kind of business. And maybe not, and maybe a restaurant completely makes sense, but I find that people just don't even consider whether they can make more money from investing in a restaurant. Whereas if they invest in anything else, any other kind of investment, that's exactly what they would be looking for. So I'm going to hopefully get you starting to think like an investor. Simplifying the search is going to be important because there are so many franchises out there, and I'm going to touch on financing options as well. And then I would encourage you to follow up with Heather and Romain on financing if you really want help going through the process. So when I used to do this program live, I used to ask this question of the group. I would look at everybody and say, okay, imagine you're the owner of a successful business. How would your life be better? Really, what I was asking was, what are you hoping to get out of a business? Why are you thinking of maybe opening up a business? And there are too many people on the webinar to go around today. Although if you'd like to share your thoughts on that with me in the chat, I would love that. But basically what I found was, everybody has a different answer. People look for different things. Sometimes it is an existing business owner that just, they really can't figure out a way to grow their business in the current environment. And so they think about launching a new division or a separate business. And maybe that separate business has some synergy with the business that they have, and they can cross market between businesses. For individuals, they are typically looking for the things in red, the ones that actually decide to actually go forward and open the business. They're usually looking for control. Usually that's time control, but also a lot of us have been through situations where you feel like, in a job, it's really not in your control. Things are changing. You don't know if you're going to survive a reorg. The company's looking at moving maybe. And so you kind of feel like, well, gee, I've got my mortgage to pay. I've got kids who are going to go to college. I mean, I need to make sure that I can provide for my family. So that's financial control. But time control too is something that a lot of people would talk about before the pandemic. And today, when everybody has been most people have been doing some sort of work at home, or did some sort of work at home during the worst part of the pandemic. And it kind of went, I could do this job remotely, and I don't necessarily have to do it in the hours that an employer set. And so I really kind of miss being able to schedule all of my personal stuff and take care of things for myself and my family, take care of myself. Maybe I'm going to the gym more, for example. And I would really like to have that again, because now, whether you're, remote still, or you're back in an office, it's really, most people are finding it much harder to control their schedule. And a lot of people are working more hours than they've ever worked before, just because, well, for a variety of reasons. So that's a big one. That's a lot of the feedback is, this is what I need, and this is what's really important to me. And then you'll see some other things, financial security, or in the case of a business, I need to make more money. Maybe I need more work for my employees. People have been through layoffs. That's an extremely painful experience to go through. And so they just really, they want to set themselves up so that they really never have to go through that again. And then also, a lot of people right now are starting businesses while they work, because they really never want to be in a position where they can be laid off or relocated, or their job can change and the new job isn't really what they're good at. Now they're worried about being fired for a job that they really didn't sign up for in the first place. A lot of people are looking for a business that will allow them to have something that they can go into that will make money in case the job ends up not being a good option for them anymore. These are all in red for a reason. Red is critical. Red is, if any of these situations apply to you, you know that you have to do something different. What you'll see above it is, other reasons people talk about going into business. Just, I've always wanted to be a business owner, fulfillment. I want more flexibility so I can travel more, and I just don't want to have a boss. Typically speaking, these are not sufficiently motivating for people. Maybe there's other things that they could do to feel fulfilled, and they tend to lose focus and not be as successful in business. And I tell you this because timing is important, the timing of going into business, in terms of when to take the leap. Things to think about, if you have a job, that jobs, we talked about jobs change. In addition to what I already talked about, there's a lot of mergers going on. There's a lot of bosses, directors, VPs, presidents, whomever you report to, they are also part of this great resignation. They're leaving, they're moving. And then the person that you report to suddenly is not so much of a fan. And then you have to reestablish credibility. Company priorities change. There's a lot of changes going on right now in companies. And of course, there's always industry changes. And some of it, it has to do with technology or the internet kind of, eventually puts the kibosh on a particular industry that had been doing well. And these are some of the things, by the way, that we also look for when evaluating franchises. We're looking for, something that would be more like technology resistant, I would say. Another thing to think about is, eventually there's going to be another recession. We don't know when, but just if you look throughout history, the economy goes up and down and up and down. It's pretty consistent. So it'll hit eventually. So, where are you going to be positioned when that happens? What's going to happen to your business or your job then? The good side of a recession, though, and this happened for sure during the pandemic too, is that labor costs, not so much, but real estate costs in a lot of cases were lower. I knew some people who opened up coffee shops during the pandemic, and they were paying about half of the rent with the new locations that they had been paying before the pandemic. That's an incredible opportunity for someone to go into business, and because rent is usually one of the biggest costs for a restaurant or coffee business. So there, you want to be there when these opportunities present themselves too. When's the next boom coming? There's a bunch of current and future unmet needs. One of the things, this is a separate presentation, but one of the things that I talk about in my What's New and What's Next presentation is the fact that I think 65% of people now have pets. Pandemic pets, lots of people adopted pets. They wanted company while they were at home. They still have the pets, hopefully. And what happens, to pets when they go away, when they start traveling again? Well, they need pet care and they need supplies, and these pets need to be groomed. And there really aren't a lot of pet businesses. There are some pet franchises, but not many. And some of them have opened and really started to boom in the last couple of years. So things like that, a boom in, in people having kids, a boom in home services. I'll talk about some of these things too, but you want to be there and ready and in business at the time that the opportunities present themselves. And this is a photo that I actually took during the pandemic. My family and I got a room at the Hyatt Chesapeake Bay in Cambridge, Maryland, for about 2 weeks. And my husband and I were working from a hotel room with this gorgeous view outside, and my daughter was finishing up high school, also virtually from this room. And so, things will change. Some people are afraid of change and will kind of just shelter in place and be afraid to do anything. But business people look for the opportunities. This is, Jack Welch, the former CEO of IBM, is when there's change, there's always opportunities. So this is what you want to look for. So going into business, you have basically three options. I'm not going to talk about multi-level marketing because my focus is and has always been on businesses where you can, live off of the income from the business, and not multi-level marketing. Not that you can't. I purchase multi-level marketing products too. They're usually very good quality, actually. But the fact is that most people who have multi-level marketing businesses don't live off of the income. They're mostly very part-time, and they have other jobs that they really, spend most of their time and money on. So if you're starting a business and you want to make sure that you have something that can support you and your family, if you have a family, three main options are these: buy a franchise, go into business through a franchise, start from scratch, or buy somebody else out. And by the way, franchises are independent businesses. People form franchises as sole proprietorships or partnerships or corporations sometimes. My own business is an S Corp, and I am technically a franchise, even though I'm a consultant. I'm an S Corp. So you can buy and sell a franchise too. The only difference being that the franchisor has the right to say no to your buyer, but they typically don't. They really want things to go smoothly. They just want a good person to run the business after you exit. So these are the three options, and I'm going to talk about pros and cons of each. It just depends on what your situation is. So starting a business from scratch, I mean, the obvious advantage is you don't have to pay anyone for their business, and you don't have to pay a franchisor any franchise fees or royalties. And nobody tells you what to do. You can make all the rules. The disadvantages are that most people who go into business, they've never run the business before. And so it takes them a really long time to be profitable. And when I used to go around the room and ask people, do you know anybody who started an independent business? And if they said yes, I would say, well, how long if you really know them, how long did it take them to be profitable? And the minimum amount that I heard was, to be really profitable, not just a couple extra dollars. The lowest number I heard was 10 years. Now, for me, when I was transitioning from employee to business owner, I did not have a 10-year period. I did not have the luxury of that to ramp up to where I was currently earning at before. So a franchise or buying somebody else out can be a shortcut to that. The other thing is you might not figure it out in 10 years, because during those 10 years, you're going to be trying things that don't work. You may not realize they don't work for a while. It's not that there's no one to turn to for help, because that's what my co-hosts do, but it is often hard to find somebody who ran the exact same kind of business. So they can solve they can help you out, but they still might not be able to help you figure out, what kind of marketing to put out there, what it should look like, what it should say, who your target market really is, what kind of pricing you should have. And you're going to have to, through trial and error, figure that out on your own. And it's got a pretty high failure rate, because a lot of people just give up before they figure that out, and they have to go, maybe back to work and work for someone else. So you can shortcut that by buying somebody else out. And I've had clients before. We've found some franchise owners selling their business. Sometimes they're profitable, and they're just, during the pandemic, especially, there were a few people that just kind of said, okay, I think it's time to retire. Sometimes they're not profitable, but it's a really good franchise. And I'll talk about that too, because the turnaround period can be really short. So think of this in the next topic as kind of possible shortcuts for you. If you haven't run the business before and you don't know exactly what to do, you might want to think about some sort of a shortcut. So one shortcut is buying an existing business, franchise or not. the advantages are that there's some sort of historical results. Certainly, if you're going to be taking out a loan to finance that purchase, the bank would like to see that. But they're also going to be looking very carefully, and I would say more carefully than ever before because of the pandemic, at how successful this business is. And you might not know this unless you've actually been in the market. I would say that at least 90% of the businesses that are out there for sale have problems. There are problems with them, and it's a seller who just really wants to get out. Either because the seller really isn't making much money, they're marginally profitable, or sometimes they know there's a problem and they can't really figure out what it is, and so they're just out. Sometimes they know that something is coming. Maybe there's a big national competitor, maybe it's a franchise, or maybe it's just a big box store that they really just can't compete with, and so you find a listing really appealing. It's an existing business, they've got a location, they've got employees, and you're going, why are you selling? And the person selling their business always has an answer. They always have a very innocuous answer for you. Well, it's because I've loved this business, but I just want to do something different, or my spouse has to move, or something like that. There's always an answer, but usually there's more, and you really have to dig into, you have to be a sleuth to figure out what's going on. You're not, there are employees in place, but if you buy somebody's business, you're not going to get to talk to the employees until after you've purchased. They don't want you to be rocking the boat with employees. They don't want you talking to vendors. Usually no one's going to know about this until the sale, you've purchased the business, until the sale is done. So these are the good things about a business. It's already started up. The disadvantages are, there are always hidden motives, which they probably won't tell you. They don't have to tell you. It's hard sometimes to figure out what the real cash flow is because, well, one reason is because we business owners, there's a lot of creative things that we can do with our taxes that are all legal. That you have a lot of options in terms of deferring income, putting them into pension plans and retirement accounts, writing off a lot of things that you're already paying for against your income in order to, minimize your tax liability. Because here you are, an independent business owner. You don't have a board of directors or shareholders. Well, you might have a board of directors, but you don't have shareholders. So you're not trying to impress anyone. You're just trying to make money as much as possible. So we do a lot of things to minimize the number that turns up on our tax return. When I sell you my business, I will probably give you a copy of my tax return, and you're going to say, Heather, you said your business makes this, but I'm seeing a fraction of that. And I say, yes, that's true, but et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you really have to figure out what my real cash flow is after I add back all the unnecessary things that I have charged against my income. So these are the things that you have to know. Employees can leave. I had a client once who found out that the employees were stealing from the business. Didn't know that until he purchased the business. Also, you want to consider whether the person or people you're buying the business from, whether they had any debt. If you're taking out a loan to buy their business, don't forget to consider the amount that you're going to be paying back to the bank every month when you look at what you're left with. And owners of existing businesses, if it's not a franchise, even if it is a franchise, they're not always great at training you. Their buyer they're not all good teachers. And a lot of times people run a business, even if they're good at it, and all the information is kind of just in their head. They don't typically have an operations manual. All of this most of this is true when you buy an existing franchise location too. Two main differences is the seller will still tell you what the seller tells you, but when you investigate a franchise, you actually can go through the exact same process that a brand new candidate for a franchise goes through, which means you're going to see this, you can actually talk to every single one of the other franchisees and ask them about this business that you're buying and what's really going on. And what do you know about the seller? What do you think the real reason is that he or she is selling? And then you can figure out for yourself if that's something that's fixable. The other thing is you're not relying on the owner of the business, the seller, to train you. You're actually relying on the franchise. In fact, the franchise is going to train you in the most up-to-date way. They're going to give you all of the current methodologies that they, every year franchises get smarter. They learn, they keep learning from the franchisees' activity, sometimes their own activity if they have corporate locations. And the next training class gets the benefit of all of that knowledge. So the seller that you buy from may have gone to training 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Even if that person could help you, you probably want to hear what the franchisor knows today about what you should be doing. So you don't have to rely on that. Okay, and by the way, I am monitoring chat. If anybody has any questions, please pop them in the chat. So let me tell you about franchises. And I'll say that one of the things that attracted me to franchises, I don't think they're for everyone, by the way, and I'm going to tell you who it's for and who it's not for. But one of the things I like as a former lawyer is that there's evidence. You can figure out, if you know what you're doing, you can figure out whether a business actually works or not. You can get past all of the promises made by the franchisor and figure out for sure whether someone like you, with the amount of capital you bring to the table, with your professional background, with the amount of time that you can put into the business, actually succeeds in this business. But first, let me tell you who it's not for, because this is really important. And I've been doing this for over 12 years. I've definitely run across some of these people. So the first bullet under its advantages is you have to be someone who can follow a system. You have to follow the system to be successful. You're not going to probably be able to decide that you want to add a menu item or a line of service or change any of the core offerings or even the appearance necessarily of a business. So the first question to ask yourself is, am I a system follower? We like classic entrepreneurs too, people who want to invent everything and disrupt markets. We need them, obviously, but they don't do well in franchises. They're not necessarily interested in, they are interested in being profitable, but it's not going to feel successful for them unless they actually invented the system, the product, or the service. Okay, so if you're that person, you look to do this another way. Another thing to know is that there are usually annual sales goals. So when you partner with a franchise, it's a contractual relationship. It's a service contract, actually. They give you exclusive rights to run a business within a certain part of the country, or maybe another country in some cases, but that's a whole separate program. But you can go into a new country through a master franchise, but the franchisor has to be ready to go into that country. But let's talk about just the US. You're going to get some sort of exclusive rights to run a business so that no other franchisee in the system is going to do business where you're doing that business. Pretty much how it works. Okay. However, in exchange for that, the contract is going to say, but our expectations are that you are going to generate at least this much money in gross sales, because most franchisors will charge a royalty based on your gross sales. So they need to know that there's enough money coming in from this exclusive area to pay their bills. I mean, franchises are not for profit. They are for profit. They have a staff of people that are working for all the franchisees, and they have to pay them and show a profit. So they need to know that they're going to make enough money to justify giving you exclusive rights. So the contract is going to say, here's how much we expect you to make. In year one, it's going to be here, year two, year three, year four, etc. And so there could be consequences, especially if you're really far off of those numbers. I mean, franchises don't want to kick people out. They really, really don't. Most franchises that I've come across, they want to keep people in. you're going to see that there's a document they file with the government that shows turnover. So they don't want anything to show up as turnover. They also want their franchisees to tell other people that most people stay in it. So they're not trying to kick you out, but if you're really, really far off from those numbers and they've worked with you for years to try to help you get up to those minimum numbers, you're probably going to have a discussion with them about either shrinking your territory or maybe selling your franchise. And they usually do give you a chance to sell. So we talked about royalties, which are really kind of the lifeblood of a franchise. You also, when you go into business with a franchise, pay a franchise fee. And people will sometimes ask me, well, what do I get for the franchise fee? Well, it's not a thing. A franchise fee, it's very similar in some ways to a consulting fee. If you go into a new industry, I had a friend who opened up a retail clothing store, women's clothing, and she hired a retail consultant because she was signing a lease. She was, guaranteeing that lease with her personal assets, and she didn't want to lose her shirt, no pun intended. But it's a fee for somebody holding your hand, training you, and then holding your hand and helping you correct course as you open your business until you're successful. And then, there are documentation and things too, but essentially that's what the franchise fee covers. Some people don't like paying a franchise fee. They don't want to pay a royalty. Again, you look at how much experience you bring to the table. If there's any doubt that you absolutely know how to run the business, this is really something to consider. As I said, there's usually some sort of protected territory. As a franchisee myself, I like protected territory because I like knowing that if I share my best practices with my colleagues, they're not going to go and compete against me. So it's the information gets shared a lot more freely. On the other hand, if you're somebody who wants to start a business and grow nationally, this is not the model for you. You're not going to be able to do that with a franchise. It is a binding contract. You sign, the franchisor sign. Can you get out of a franchise contract? I would say yes, almost always. Maybe there are some exceptions, but I haven't seen yet a franchisor that insists on keeping someone in a contract. That person can be very destructive to the whole brand, to the morale within the company. So usually they will negotiate an exit with you. And again, I've never seen it otherwise, but maybe it happens every once in a while. The contract also has a term. It's usually a 10-year term, and it's renewable. So basically what happens is at the end of your term, you decide whether you want to go forward. They decide whether they want to keep you. Generally speaking, if you're making money and you're really, you're not way off those minimum numbers, they want to keep you. Again, they really want to keep you around unless things are going terribly wrong. Keep in mind that this last bullet, a franchisor's problems, your problems. I get constant inquiries about Chick-fil-A, about McDonald's, some of these businesses that not only do you see in your neighborhoods, but they seem to always be in the news. Remember that, when you go into business with a franchise, if it's a franchise that's constantly in the news, the national news especially, if anything goes wrong, if they do anything controversial, spill coffee, somebody in Iowa spills coffee on someone and it sears their skin, or somebody eats a rotten tomato, people are going to stop going to your business. They're going to hear about it and they're going to assume that you all have this problem, whether that's true or not. So it's not a no-brainer to go with it. I think actually the best opportunity in franchising is finding a franchise that has a proven really, really good track record, but it's not national news. And usually, it's mostly the restaurants that are kind of at that level. But, you don't want to be sabotaged by something that had nothing to do with your business. So essentially, these are things to know, and some of you may have already kind of ruled yourself out of a franchise, but it's a great, business, a great career for a lot of people, it's typically a really good shortcut to profitability because they already know what they're doing. It's a proven business model. The brand may or may not be familiar. It's actually, that's actually not something that I personally have found to be that important, by the way, is brand familiarity. It's nice to have, but it's actually not that hard to create local brand familiarity. It's usually just a couple of weeks of marketing, and a lot of franchises have these phenomenal grand opening programs. Within 2 or 3 weeks, everybody knows you're there. So there's people in the franchise office that are doing marketing for you. They're creating, their sales teams are creating national relationships so that maybe if you have a home services business, you just walk right into your local Home Depot and say, "Hi, I'm Superior Fence." And they say, "Oh yeah, we know you guys. You want us to refer all of our business to you when they come in and talk about fencing?" Yeah, that could be a lot of money to your bottom line. Operation support, you're going to have a website. If that website is hacked, if it goes down, if there are, they're probably going to give you a back end system too. If there's a cybersecurity attack and somebody, shuts you down or tries to steal information, you don't handle that. That's your corporate office that handles that. So, that's something you want to look at, these things that it might be really valuable. You're paying a royalty so that a lot of these functions that are non-core functions get outsourced to the franchisor, and they really know what they're doing. So quicker startup, there's initial training. Good franchises have a lot of ongoing training. They usually have a annual meeting. We actually meet twice a year because we have so many businesses to stay on top of. But most franchises meet once a year, and they bring in, industry experts. They share best practices. They want the franchisors want you to grow and grow and grow because it's a symbiotic relationship. They're making money when you make money. You also have access to other franchisees that could be extremely helpful. It certainly was, I would say, to me, helpful during the pandemic, where we all went, "Oh my gosh, what do we do?" We had calls at least once a week, sometimes more often, where we said, "Okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? What's working? What's not working? Let's test out some new online marketing programs. You test this, you test that," so that we can all get smarter quicker. And finally, and this is really key, and some of you might be on my newsletter list already, I just wrote about this, regulation. So we hate government regulation, except that it's nice that if we invest in something, the government is looking at whether this is actually a real business with profitability, or it's a bunch of promises. When you invest in stock, when you invest in bonds, the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, says you can't, you have to provide a prospectus, you have to meet all of these conditions, and we have to approve the sale. Well, it's the same thing with a franchise. If you invest in a franchise, it's not the SEC, it's the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, that it provides oversight. And also in Virginia, the Corporation Commission also has to approve the franchise in order for you to be permitted to sign on with them. And they go through every single year a process where they look at the most current version of their disclosure document and they say, yes or no. Can this franchise continue to expand in our state, or do we see some problems and we're not going to allow that to happen? So as a consumer, I have to say this is where regulation can be good. Things to look for in the franchise, how much experience do they have? How simple is it for you, given the experience that you bring to the table? What kind of training are they offering? They all say they offer initial training, but there's different levels of the quality and the extent of that training. Also, what are they doing for existing franchisees? Are they continuing to offer support and training? Again, name recognition, I wouldn't worry so much about that. It's just more something nice to have. But do they have a real marketing team? As they get bigger, are they starting to create national relationships that you can leverage so that you could, get access to more customers? What kind of operational systems do they have? And then you also should spend some time talking to franchisees about whether franchisees get along with each other, if there's this culture of teamwork, because your franchisees, your fellow franchisees, they end up being kind of a second family to you, your new work colleagues. Even if you're not in the same geographic area, which you probably won't be, we talk to each other, and we want to hear that there isn't infighting, or there isn't. Every once in a while it happens, but there really isn't much of it. I think that's really important, because you're going to get a lot more sharing of best practices if there's this culture of teamwork. Let me see. I have a question. How likely is it to bring a franchise to a new area? What influences the franchisor to take the risk in an area not previously operated in? That's a great question. First of all, I'm going to answer the question for you, but I would also say, whatever franchise you're researching, ask them this question, because it varies from franchise to franchise. But generally speaking, a franchisor will use data. They will know, or they should know, I should say, and this is what you should investigate. They should know who their target market is, who typically buys their product or service, and they should be looking at data to see whether there are enough of those people, or in the case of a business to business franchise, whether there are enough of those businesses near where you're hoping to locate. I mean, they should be looking at their successful franchisees, how many people, households, or businesses were around them. Does that same number exist near the new location? And they want to take the risk if they think it's a good risk for them, because, people will sometimes say, well, I'm putting all the money and effort into this. Aren't I taking the risk? You are. However, the franchisor's reputation can really go down the tubes if they make a lot of mistakes. I mean, it happens, especially with a young franchise. They don't know everything, certainly at the beginning, but they really try to pick good franchisees and good locations. You should be hearing from other franchisees that they really know what they're doing. That's what you're. Ask them for their criteria, and then ask other franchisees if they think that the franchisor knows what they're doing. The other thing you can also do is talk to franchisees and ask them about your area and say, is this someplace that you would open up a location? And that reminds me, one thing I didn't mention on the last slide is that the regulation also means that they have to file. I did mention that they have to file this disclosure document. They have to give it to you before you commit to the franchise, before you pay them a penny, or before you sign a contract. And that's important, because there's a lot of information you get from that document. Part of that is in the back of the document is a full list of every single one of their franchisees and the contact information. And as I said before, it'll show you who left the franchise within the last year. So what that means is, and this is the part that I love, this is the evidence. This is your evidence. You can contact people who don't work for the franchise, who don't make a penny if you join the franchise. They really couldn't care less whether you join the franchise or not. And you can ask them, how successful are you? Ask them about the market. Ask them what they do every day, what the time commitment is. We're going to talk about this a little bit later on, but the evidence is there if you know where to look for it. So I hope that answered your question. Let me test your knowledge here. Actually, I don't know if I have time to ask for answers to this, but so I'm going to just kind of run through this. But one myth about franchises is that they succeed because of the quality of their products. Sometimes people go into business and their competitive advantages. Our hamburger is better. Our clothes are high, couture. We have a better quality product, and they believe that is the key to success. And I'm not going to say that franchises don't have high quality products, but the reality is they're really more focused on the middle market. They're looking for, the biggest group of people that buys whatever they sell, and what are those people willing to pay for this product or service that they buy all the time. And in some cases, they're looking for a big chunk of the market that's at the bottom. Example is McDonald's. Can you make a better hamburger at McDonald's? Everybody's hand goes up when I did this in person. It's not a high quality item. Even if you like it, I don't think most people would say that it's high quality. Yet they really sell a lot of them. It's not the quality though, it's because of the system. It's the, it's the consistency of the product. It's about where they locate their stores, which, they've always been very good. They've had some problems with their products, but they've always been very good at picking real estate. So that you can see them easily off of the main roads. They're good at couponing. They're good at, the drive-through. You can get a hamburger and fries and shakes very, very quickly at a McDonald's. I think somebody was just telling me that there's actually some sort of a monitor that they have at the window that reports back to, I don't know who in McDonald's, how long a customer has been sitting at that window to make sure that the system is going quickly enough. But this is why people come back, because if you want fast food, you have to go to something like a McDonald's, and you don't really care too much about high quality beef. You're not really thinking about that. You're like, let's get the kids fed. Okay. Another myth about franchises is they only do well if there's not a lot of competition, that they typically, you're the key to success in owning a business is to be the first to market. And you might be the first to market, but actually franchises, when they open up new brands, because a lot of times there are franchises that will launch new services, new products, and they're kind of offshoots of a franchise company, or they'll acquire independent businesses and they'll turn them into franchises sometimes. They actually like markets where there's a lot of people already buying, but nobody really owns a big share of the market, where they call it market fragmentation. So McDonald's actually opened up back in the 50s, I think, during a time that there were a ton of restaurants selling hamburgers. But McDonald's came in and said, well, nobody seems to be owning the market. And we're gonna do better real estate location, better job marketing, couponing. We're gonna bring in cute little animals and the kids play area. And we're gonna outmarket them, and we're gonna have a consistent product so that when salespeople go into a new territory, because traveling salespeople will go around the country, they know that they if they don't find anything else that they feel comfortable with, they know they can walk into a McDonald's and know exactly what they can get. And yes, fast food, it's still about 95%, but there's a lot out there that people don't know about. It's just that food franchises, they just keep opening up all the time. Yeah. So the next market that actually started expanding the way that fast food did was hair care. In the 80s, they started popping up as franchises. Obviously, there were hair salons before the 1980s, but there were not franchises. And somebody looked at this market. I think Regis was the first company to start franchising hair salons, and they said, "Look at all these people buying hair services, nail services. What if we actually had a marketing program?" Because hair salons don't typically market. They don't typically coupon. They don't typically reach out to their customers. What if we made sure that the salons were clean so people didn't have to worry about nasty things ending up in their hair, and of course, the hair all over the floor? What if we actually had quality standards? So that started in the 1980s. Now there are a ton of not just hair care franchises, but nails and eyebrows and eyelashes. It's a huge market. And it's an interesting market too. I mean, I'm going to guess that most of you on the call did not wake up thinking you were going to think about going into a salon business. But when I talk about businesses that you can run in addition to a job, in addition to other businesses, this is one of those industries where your manager can run most of the day-to-day, and most of the people who own salon franchises rarely come into the shop. They're usually semi-absentee, and most of them have zero hair care experience. They're not licensed to cut, color hair, do nails, eyebrows, etc. But they hire a manager who is a beauty technician, and that person, like I said, can run most of the day to day. They know people who they can hire. They know how to motivate people because they're part of that community. So it makes it a very interesting business to look at as more of a passive, or I say semi-passive business. So what I want you to come away with is, think about, if you go into business, think about businesses or industries rather, where there's a lot of activity, but there's no one or two companies that owns most of the market share. That could be very ripe. And also I will say that I've seen franchises open up in industries where there are a lot of other franchises already in that industry, but because of the volume of demand, the amount of demand for that product or service, one of the industries is damage restoration. I mean, think about how many people have had a flood in their basement, in their house, pipes burst, the water heater leaks, then there's a major storm and everybody's waiting for, that stuff to be dried up. The roof sometimes is damaged. I mean, there's an endless amount of demand, and people typically wait a long time for someone to just be available to come to their house. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not just the amount of competitiveness, but you also really have to look at the amount of demand for the product or service that you have. And of course, it's not just fast food and retail. We've already talked about some of the other businesses. I really, the first four types of franchises listed here, they all have physical locations, some sort of a store or warehouse or a hotel, obviously. I think the service sector, I mean, most people miss this, and I really want to spend some time on it, because these businesses, some of them can be run from home. Maid service that you see here, maid services a lot of times end up people start them from home, a home office. They have cars parked somewhere else, but they don't rent office space initially. Eventually they might want to, but it's a lot less money to start that business than any restaurant, any automotive, or really any kind of retail. And then some other service businesses, even if you do need office space, that office space is a lot less expensive also than paying for a storefront. In fact, I don't know if Heather's SBDC has it, but some of them have office space that you can rent through them, incubator space for, not a whole lot of money. Compare that to, I just heard that one of the small retail spaces in my town is charging $8,000 a month for not a big space. But this is, less, I think they're usually less than $1,000. And that's how you start your business, with a lot less capital, and you can get more business for the money too. So the thing to think about is, this is a big decision, even if it's not your first business. If, when you have a pot of money and you're thinking about, well, how do I invest it? Remember that, you might have some good ideas, but there are thousands of options out there, over 90 different industries. They're not all going to be available near you, and Virginia does not approve every single franchise expanding, so you're limited by that. There are also certain franchises that require a special business license, so you might not have that, although a lot of times the franchisors can kind of get around that by having somebody, until you have your license, sometimes somebody in their office. It comes up a lot in the home services industry, that a lot of times they want you to have a contractor's license, but a lot of times the franchises can actually help you get around that until you're eligible for that license. And then there are a lot of franchises out there that really don't have a track record, or if they have one, it's not good. And then the last thing, don't forget, is profit is just $1 over expenses. So most people don't go into the business in hopes of earning $1 a year. You're going to have much bigger goals than that. So, you want to spend some time figuring out really what you're hoping to achieve, and make sure to, choose a business that will allow you to where you can find evidence, again, that you can really hit those goals. I have a question. Oh, Heather says, we don't have space for rent available, but there's co-working space in the Roanoke Valley through CoLab. That's great. That's great. Now, in terms of cost, you don't need hundreds of thousands. There are franchises you can open up for even less than $50,000. And then some are, more. So if you are hoping to open up something in retail, I don't care where you are in Virginia, you're going to probably spend at least $175,000 to open up your first location of a franchise. That's just plain retail. I'm talking about a martial arts studio with paint and mats. Now you look at opening up a restaurant, it's going to be at least 250,000, if not much, much more. So that's all fine and good. And you don't have to, that doesn't have to be out of pocket. We're going to talk about funding options, but you should know too, before you make this decision, that you could save a lot of money. You might be able to get twice the business if you have that money or have access to it. You might be able to get twice as much space and as much territory in a franchise for a different kind of business. So I will say that, in my 12 years of doing this, I keep dating myself, but I've been doing this for a while. I've yet to see really a business that all in, including the franchise fee and all of the other working capital that you need to really get it going, for less than $45,000 in a franchise. They really don't tend to make money, not much money anyway. Excuse me. They tend to be add-on businesses. Things like, I don't know, adding a machine that, embroiders a name on things, coffee machines. I mean, these are really not businesses. Again, if you're looking for something that's really going to move the needle and support you one day, you're really probably not going to find that for less than $45,000. But for $45,000 to, I would say, $120,000, you're looking at almost the entire category of these service businesses that I referred to before, where you don't need retail space. You might need some employees, and that might be why it's closer to $120,000. But even $50,000 to $100,000, you might have a home-based business or a really inexpensive space to operate in. You might have one or two employees, and you might have a ton of customers. There's no correlation whatsoever between what you spend and what your business can make. And again, oftentimes you can save a heck of a lot of money. When you get into the over 500,000 range, the reason those businesses are more, you're typically talking about a really big space. Things like daycare businesses tend to be, actually, they tend to be above 600,000, some are over $1 million to open. You just need a lot of space for all those classrooms. And the employee expense and the marketing, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so just I want you to understand what the options are so that you can make the best possible decision. Here's a formula to run through for when you're evaluating a business. Is it a good system? Can I prove that there's a track record of profitability? Can I legally open it up in my market? Is it available? And actually, is there good availability? Because even if there's a territory available, you want to look at how strong that territory is, because it might be viable, but sometimes it makes sense to shift over to a franchise that's just a little bit younger, that has the best territories available. The ones that are closer to the places where most people live or most of the businesses are located. Usually, is it a product or service that people need? Need is better than want now and into the foreseeable future. And is it a good business for you? And I'm going to talk about what to think about here. But just because I can buy a location of McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, and by the way, it's really hard to find availability. There are not many locations that you can open in the US anymore, at least in areas where a lot of people live. But even if I could open one, I personally would not do well, because my skill set is not managing, young people and just minimum wage hourly employees. I've never done it. I've never enjoyed, I've managed people before, but I don't enjoy managing a lot of people. It's just that everybody's different. We all come to this with different strengths, and you want to find something that really leverages your strength. So things to consider in evaluating franchises rather, look at demographics. The two biggest buying groups right now, or population groups, are the baby boomers, 60 plus, and millennials. If you have a business where the product or service is something that is proven to be purchased by baby boomers or millennials, if it's not a B2B business, if it's B2C, that's a good thing. So, what some of the markets that have really been booming because of this, health and wellness, repairs. Why repairs? Because as you get older, you don't tend to do your own repairs. Young people typically don't have that skill set at all. Cleaning businesses too, you wouldn't think so, but young people typically, again, as you get older, you probably don't want to be on the floor scrubbing tiles. Young people, they don't typically do their own cleaning. As soon as they can afford it, they hire a cleaning service to do it. They value the free time that they have, and they want to preserve that. But health and wellness is interesting because it's appearance, it's health itself. As we get older, we tend to have health issues, unfortunately. And we tend to want to maintain and improve our health and our appearance, look young. So these are really good industries that we focused on. Anything that's essential, obviously, you got to get your hair cut, got to get your car repaired. If you have pets or children, they have to be fed and cared for. The fire and flood situation has to be remedied pretty quickly, actually, especially if it's a flood, because water turns into mold within, I heard, 3 days. And then what happens when the space gets dried off? New flooring, window coverings get changed constantly. It's not a big expense. Painting. There's a lot of home improvement. If you haven't experienced it already, and probably most of you have, I certainly have, is home improvement is a category that I've always talked about, but it's crazy right now. I mean, partially because of the real estate boom. People move into a new house, they want to make it nicer, they want to make it theirs. When you sell your house, you want to make it look nicer so that you get a better selling price. But also, I mean, just people having spent so much more time in their houses makes people look around, has been making for the past couple of years, look around and say, gosh, I would love to make this a really nice office. I would like to make my bedroom really comfortable, make it an oasis. And anything outdoors, oh my gosh, we had a patio put in. It took us 9 months for the crew and the materials to be available for that, because everybody is having patios and swimming pools and cabanas and all that put in right now, because look how we've been socializing, a lot of outdoor socializing. And we want to make sure that if there's another pandemic, that we still have something to do at home, and maybe we can entertain our friends outdoors if we need to do that. So all of these are essential businesses. In the B2B sector, these are markets that have been really interesting for a while. There are businesses that sell safety equipment that are franchises or franchise-like. Some of them are distribution models. Businesses, really interesting business model is workspace rental, franchises where they buy or lease space and then they build it out so they can sublease it to other businesses. All kinds of IT service businesses, sales training, marketing, all kinds of marketing businesses, advertising, printing. And I'm not talking about printing, stationery. I'm talking about huge graphic design for outdoor spaces, for trade show spaces. These are big bucks jobs that people are getting, and it's essentially a manufacturing business. I've personally placed people in this business in the past, and there's a lot of business there to be had. Commercial cleaning, I want to just spend a minute on commercial cleaning because, it's always something that I thought I would never recommend to anybody because, cleaning businesses, right? Yuck. So what I found was when I started at the beginning of my career as a consultant, when I started going to networking events, and there are always bankers there, you go to network with Chamber of Commerce and BNI groups. When I mentioned commercial cleaning, the bankers would always get excited. And I thought, okay, well, what does this have to do with banking? No, they've seen the accounts of people who have janitorial services, which is what commercial cleaning is. And they know there's an incredible amount of opportunity. And when you think about it, I think I have something about this on the next page. No matter what happens, these offices get clean. People have to clean their office. Also, education businesses, and we talked about fixing and home improvement businesses. Um, they always have business, and that's only been accelerated by the pandemic. Um, Personnel companies, aka staffing businesses, they always do well, but the pandemic, anytime there's a recession, businesses cut back, they fire people, but they still have certain needs. They just go to staffing businesses and hire part-time. So imagine a business where you work out of an office and you have a couple of, maybe 2 or 3 key employees in the office with you. That's it. All of your other employees only get paid when there's a job. So you've got all these people, and some of them have hundreds of people out in the field working only when there's a client. That's a very, very interesting, to me, scalable business. Not everybody can do this. You have to have that right B2B kind of sales and consulting skill. But if you can do something like that, for significantly less than a cost of a restaurant, you can do much better financially. Well, if you find the right franchise partner, but you can do much better financially. So I think you're already starting to hear that there are all these different business models. Most people know retail, but there are a lot of people who have a business that only ever has one location. And as they grow, they just move into a different, bigger location. But also some franchises have more experience than others. The less experienced franchises tend to be more flexible because they will defer more to their franchisees. They're still learning. They know, you're going to only partner with a company that really knows something. They know more than you do, but a lot of times there's a lot that they are willing to let you test in your market. Older franchises, so people like the fact that they have all this knowledge, but they also are the least flexible. And so if you're somebody who really wants to be part of the decision making for your own market, you might want to look for a younger, more flexible business. There are also businesses that you can run when you have a job or other businesses. And then there's also this concept of regional and area development, which I never really talked about too much until recently, because what some of my clients are finding is some of these regional development, area development models, that aspect of it is actually semi-absentee. So they're able to do some consulting, but also be an area developer. Now they tend to be more expensive because you actually kind of step in the shoes of the franchise, and you're getting some of the royalty, you're getting some of their franchise fee, but it's out there. And if you've got the money to invest, in a McDonald's, you could probably afford a huge regional area license and have a much better lifestyle than running a McDonald's, and probably do better financially. We're going to talk about, and everybody's looking for something different, this concept of semi-absentee. We also call it semi-passive. People say, well, what is that? Give me some examples. Well, here are some industries where I have seen some of these semi-passive businesses. It's not comprehensive, and this doesn't mean that every business in these industries can be run semi-passively. The franchisor itself has to have solid systems set up so that your manager can run most of the operations by him or herself. What you'll see here, though, is that in the food businesses, typically not semi-absentee. Now, you might say, well, I've seen restaurants where the owner's never there. That would probably not, for most restaurants, that's only after they have 3 to 4 to 5 restaurants open. At that point, they can afford to pay a very big salary to a general manager to run that, and the owner can step back. But that's not something that you would be able to start, usually can start semi-absentee. Also home care and even some of the education businesses where the kids are really young, you probably can't, at least initially, take your eye off the business part of the day. You really have to there's a lot that can go wrong for obvious reasons with little kids, or an elderly, more vulnerable, or population where people are more vulnerable. And that you want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And, once your business gets big enough, yes, maybe at that point you can hire a general manager, but I wouldn't call these businesses semi-absentee. So what do you do with all of this information? I'm giving you all these examples and telling you what to look out for. The first thing I want you to do is think of your search for a business in terms of fit. What does that mean? Think of a franchise as a vehicle that can get you from today, where you have a problem to solve. Remember that slide: lack of control, not making enough money, an inconsistent job or business. Get from point A to the point where you've got enough income and enough stability and enough control over your time. It's a vehicle, first and foremost. And of course, also you want to look for something that'll actually enable you to minimize your risk. But first, before you do this, you have to define what you're looking for. So we call this determining your business model. Think about how much money you need to make, how quickly you need to make that money. What kind of lifestyle do you want to have? I mean, are you going to be happy, working full time, or do you really, at this point in your life, want to be working semi-absentee, or do you want to be able to run another business or have a job while you open up this business? Have both going on at the same time. And then try to project forward. Think about 5 years, because maybe in 5 years, your kids will be out of the house. And maybe at that point, you want to have a more flexible lifestyle, or you want to have, the ability to travel a lot more than you're able to travel now. Or maybe by then you want to have a beach house somewhere and you want to be able to work remotely most of the time, or at least maybe during the summer. Think about that, because if you write all this down, you'll know to ask questions about this when you talk to franchisees. Also, think about your transferable business skills. There are different businesses for people who are good at sales. You don't have to sell to run a business. It helps, but there are lots of businesses where the owners never sell. They're more operations, management, customer service. Different businesses for different people, but you want to really think about what you're really best at, what your strongest skill set is, and then look for a franchise where the people who are doing well are the people who are just like you. Also, how do you feel about employees? Some franchises don't start with employees, and some of them, maybe you'll only ever have one and it's a choice. Some franchises use contractors. My business, I don't have any full-time employees right now. I use contractors. But a lot of people like employees, especially people who have led in teams before, built teams. A lot of times that was the most fun part of their job. So if that's important to you, you go the other way. You look for a business with employees. Certainly outline a budget. What's the maximum amount of money you want to put into this new project, this new business, and what's the maximum amount of loan that you would be comfortable with. I think it's really important to do this, because every time you answer one of these questions or you lay out what your criteria are, you're narrowing, the subset of franchises that would actually be worth looking into. Where do you think you'd be happy working? From a retail space, from a restaurant, in a mall, in a strip mall, in a professional office space, or from home? Where do you think or if you're flexible, is there anything that you would want to rule out, would be less exciting for you? How many hours do you have to put into it? And also which hours? Because when people tell me I can work semi-absentee, after 8 p.m. and before 7 a.m. and on weekends, most semi-absentee businesses would also require you to have some flexibility during the day, not meaning that you would have to work on that business every day, but, can you answer a phone call? Can you talk to an irate customer? Can you handle something that comes up in the middle of the day? Or is that really, really hard to do given the businesses or the job that you have right now? Also think about the number of units. So remember I said that there are multi-unit models and some where people only ever work out of one location. You know, if you pick a business where in order to meet your financial goals, you have to open up more and more locations, think about your past experience. Have you been able in the past to manage people well that you don't see every day? Because if you have multiple locations, by definition, you're not seeing some of your employees every day. You're not seeing all of your employees any day. So again, look back to your experience and what you know you've been successful at. And is there a preference that you have in terms of the type of customer? Do you like working with other businesses? Is that your comfort area? Or do you really like working with the general population where anyone can be your customer? There are pros and cons to each. You know, B2B is a lot less emotional generally. So some people like that, but some people like the really positive feedback that you get from a person whose life you just made better because of the product or service that you just sold them. So this is something to consider. But you know, talk to the people who run the businesses. It's not, a lot of people pick a business based on the product or service, but what you really want to know is, what does the owner of this business do? Talk to them. Use that disclosure document and talk to people and find out what is the function of the business owner, and is that something that you would enjoy doing. And you want to interview at least 6, if not 10 or more franchisees, including people who are struggling a little bit, to make sure. I mean, every franchise has some people who struggle, but you don't want to pick a franchise if the people who are like you are struggling. That would be one to rule out. So here's another checklist. And again, you know, please let me know if you would like this, recording, and this has this checklist. Think about the fit. Think about whether you're willing to follow the system. Can you afford it? Am I okay with the risk level? It might be exciting to be the first or second franchisee in a system, but you know, first of all, that franchise might not make it. And even if they make it, there's going to be significant changes eventually. And so the franchise today is probably going to look very different than it will look in 10 years if they make it. So you have to be okay with that level of risk. Will you like the work? Again, talk to the people who already own this franchise. Most people want to make sure that there's enough room for growth. They want a strategic market advantage. Stay away from fads. You know, it's okay to offer churros and cupcakes. I don't know what the other big fads are these days. Donuts, certainly, I think that's still growing, but you don't want to be a one-trick pony offering just a fad item, because fads by definition fade, they go away. So if you're a donut shop or a coffee shop or a churro shop, for example, make sure you have really, really good branded coffee, because coffee is, and tea, because that's been around for many, many years, and people tend to just never get sick of it and want to buy more and more, sometimes every single day. Make sure it makes enough money. Make sure your family supports you. When I counsel people through this process, I want to talk to their significant others too, to make sure that they are in favor of finding a business, because you know, the worst thing that could happen to you, I think, is you actually find a good business and you put your money into it and you're all excited and you tell all your friends and family, and your spouse was never supportive and they just want you to get out of that as quickly as possible. You can't succeed under those circumstances. And so don't settle for something, and make sure to include your spouse. When you research a franchise, your first set of calls are going to be with people who are in franchise development, and they're going to send you a copy of the disclosure document, the FDD. But then, and again, here's the evidence, you get to talk to franchisees, as many as you want to talk to, and find out what's it really like. And I found that even the most successful franchisees will tell you the bad stuff. It's like checking a reference. They'll tell you, here's who fails in this business, even though I have succeeded. There are franchise lawyers that you can talk to go through your documents, but do not hand your documents to a generalist or a corporate lawyer. It's not the same. They need to know what the franchise industry standard is. you're going to go through, it should take you no more than 4 months to research a franchise. And if you go through this process, you're going to feel like there's no other questions that you could ask. However, you probably will still feel nervous because it is a big decision that you are making. Whether you've opened businesses or not, bought and sold business, it doesn't seem to matter. At the end of all of this, you're still going to have a lump in your throat or in the pit of your stomach, and you're going to say, is this really a good idea? But you probably thought that before you bought your first house. I mean, it's a big decision that you make, but if you go through this process, there's not a whole lot that you can miss. Just briefly, in terms of capital, some of the things that people don't know about when people finance small businesses, sometimes they will use, I mean, you can go to the bank. There is an SBA program for new business startups, but you should know that some people use lines of credit. So if you're thinking about opening up a business, you know, it's never a bad idea, I think. I'm not a banker, but I think it's a good idea to have a line of credit. It's like a very inexpensive interest rate credit card. And you might be able to use that to fund your business. A lot of people do it. And the interest rate is usually lower than the rate that is offered by the SBA. I'm just, you know, letting you know, something to look into. Another thing is that sometimes people will set up a new 401k. They'll start a corporation, as you were probably going to do anyway, but this time it's a C Corp, and the C Corp is able to sell shares, and they will set up a 401k. And in the new 401k, they will transfer their old IRA or 401k, and one of the options, there are companies that will set up for you a custom 401k plan that, in addition to investing in all of the mutual funds that you can invest in now, you also have the option of buying employee shares in your own company. And what that allows you to do essentially is use funds that are sitting in your 401k and IRA to help fund your business. This could be the franchise fee, the cost of building out space. Usually, you know, when people open up retail franchises, a lot of times they do a little bit of both. They'll roll over some 401k funds, and it's not just having access to the money. There's actually some tax advantages to it that I hear time and time again. If you want to talk to one of the companies about this, I'm happy to plug you in. But this is what I hear time and time again, because you have the stock and then you go to sell your company, and I think you can avoid paying capital gains tax or something like that. But talk to them about that. Talk to the experts. I'm not a CPA. But so typically when people open up retail businesses, they'll do some combination of rolling over funds, or, you know, or using funds in an account for the initial fees. And then for the build out, they'll usually take out an SBA loan. And the money they roll over too, I mean, when you get an SBA loan, you can't get 100% of the project cost. The bank will give you usually about 20 to 25%. You're going to have to contribute the rest. You can borrow, but that money that you put in from your 401k or IRA rollover might be that amount that you have to put in anyway. So just so you know, that's out there. So now the question is when to start searching. This is really key because the franchise market, I will tell you, is really very active right now, partially because of the pandemic. A lot of franchises kind of slowed down development during the pandemic in order to focus on their franchisees. And that was absolutely the right thing to do. But now they are just geared up, and some of the franchises are selling out of territory. Like from week to week, it's a different picture of what's available. So that you want to search when you're within that time frame to complete your search at the time that you're actually interested in doing something. So I would say if you think you are looking for a full-time owner-operator business, probably, you know, if you want that to happen within the next no more than 6 months, you can start, and you should start now, because in Virginia too, it's in this refiling period. So some franchises, you have to kind of wait until they're reapproved to be able to talk to their development team. If you think it's probably going to be some sort of a retail business, then you have a little bit more of a window, because you're not going to actually have a retail business open right away. It would take you 2 to 4 months to research, find your business. If you actually, it's going to take you a lot longer if you don't follow these steps. If you follow these steps, it shouldn't take you more than 4 months. And then you go and sign the franchise agreement. The next thing that happens is you start working with the real estate team and you go through that process. And it's going to take you a while to find your space. And then when you find your space, you might have to wait for a tenant to leave, and then they tear everything down and then you rebuild. So typically, I tell people if it's going to be a retail location or a restaurant, don't expect to open 9 to 12 months from the time that you actually start working with the franchises is pretty typical. Sometimes it's even longer. Some types of spaces are a little bit harder. It seems to be the salon spaces are a little bit harder to find because not that anybody owns a lot of the market share, but because a lot of times in the strip mall leases, it'll say you will be the only salon here. And so you have to wait for a strip mall to open that doesn't have a salon space. So it takes a little bit longer. And by the way, the salon businesses, even though you couldn't go into a salon during the pandemic, oh my gosh, a lot of them are just killing it right now. It's hard to get in to see your stylist. So so it's a good rule of thumb to have at least 50,000 liquid, and that could be from the IRA or 401k rollover, but probably it would be tough for most businesses to have less than that and really be able to find something that you can afford. If you're going into this full time, good rule of thumb is to have at least 6 months of personal living expenses. Can you make money in a franchise in the first month? I've seen people do it, certainly, but you don't want to be completely stressed out when you start. You want to have a cushion. Again, involve your significant other if you're going to do this. They don't have to be on every call, but certainly when you're laying out all of your criteria for the business, you have to hear from them. You have to hear their concerns, you might find that they were hoping to move to another city in a couple of years. So, you probably don't want to open up that business until you've actually moved, because you're not going to start and sell a business for profit. You're probably going to lose money if you try to do that within 2 years. And then in terms of partnership agreements, I'm not a huge fan, and my colleagues would agree with me, of partnerships, because there's a lot that can go wrong. And I'm not talking about married couples, that's the same family, but even sometimes people going into business with their siblings, it doesn't work out. And sometimes they have to get rid of the business just because they can't see eye to eye with their partners. So if you're thinking about going into business and you really want to do it with a partner, I would suggest that you see if you can even agree on some basic things. There's a book out there called The Partnership Book. And it talks about some of the issues that come up, and it tells you, I think, to try to craft just a basic partnership agreement. A lot of times you see right there that it's not going to work out with you being a partner of this other person. We don't want to have any unnecessarily failed businesses or ruined relationship. So, just so you know, I know that you're at different points in this path, but if you do want to talk through this, again, I don't charge for this, but there's assessment tools that I use, and we spend a lot of time putting together a business model. It should be, and this is what I do, and this is what you should do, even if you want to try to go this alone, is it should be a process where you start in a logical place after you figured out what you're looking for. It's always easier to find something when you know more precisely what you're looking for. So spend the time putting together a business model the best you can. You pick some businesses initially that are different enough from each other that allow you to test different criteria, and then just keep comparing businesses until you find the right one, because there are a lot of options. And wouldn't it be great, so you have this initial idea, but what if you actually found a business that cost half of what you were hoping to spend and made more money? Most people would say that's what I want. So spend the time. Just because you have a good idea doesn't mean that you should not go through this process. I really recommend that you do. And this is really what the process looks like for those of you who are more visual learners. You put together this business model, you do due diligence. Is this seeming to go in the right direction? Am I starting to find something that really hits all of my criteria. If not, figure out what it is it's not hitting, go back, pick different businesses. And as you start to get closer to that business, you want to look into financing options, start talking to the SBDC. I mean, SBDC and the other business counseling agency, SBSD, they are incredible. The government funds all of these programs and they are incredible resources. I mean, the franchisor is going to train you first. You have to listen to their training first. But once you're in business, I mean, to have a local coach, and I think most of these programs are free or really inexpensive. It's incredible. People pay lots of money for business coaching when it's really, in your area, it's a lot of it is free or really inexpensive. So definitely take advantage of that once you're in business, and then on the financing end too. A lot of people have moved into their vacation homes during the pandemic. So I can't, I do talk to people about relocations. I have a client right now who, I mean, people have reprioritized things. I have clients right now, one in particular who wants to live near his parents who are aging. She wants to move down to Florida, live near the parents. And she knows the area though. I think it's really important to live in the area at least a little bit before you decide to open up a business there. She grew up there, but she wants to move back to the area where she grew up and be near the parents and open up her business there. And I don't think you should, if you know you're going to relocate, I wouldn't start a business until you've done that. If you think if you think you're going to relocate within 5 years or less, relocate first, I would say. But if you're going through this process and you're not sure, I mean, just kind of stay on top of what's going on in the industry, sign up for the newsletter, what have you. So questions, here's a link. I'm going to post it here too in the chat to the evaluation form, and I'll send out something too afterwards. But for those of you with cameras ready, here's a link to the evaluation where you can request the recording. If you want some help, you can note that in the evaluation, and then I'll recommend that you take the assessments. There's some assessments that we've developed specifically for people going through this process to help them build that business model. There's a bunch of questions that they answer where I can kind of help them put together our business model and then look at some businesses in their area that would actually make sense given what they're looking for. So take a picture of that, and then I'm looking for questions too. Oops. Here is my contact information. If you just want to get on my newsletter list, you can write to me, or again, use your camera and join the mailing list that way. And you'll get all of my thought leadership pieces for people who are going into business. And most of what I write, by the way, is for anybody thinking about going into business, franchise or not. I mean, most of it has some sort of reference to a franchise, but a lot of these principles are really the same no matter what business you go into. Okay, so that is all that I have. Any questions, more questions here, or anything that you want to add, Heather or Ramin? I don't know if you're still here.
Yeah, so
Yeah, there they are.
thank you so much for the very detailed presentation, and there was so much to learn and a lot of things I was getting excited about, like, wow, I didn't know that. So I see there is an evaluation form. Please fill that out, and it will help us for our next presentation. Heather, do you want to say something?
Oh, I've said so much already. I don't know if you want me to say anything more. I mean, it's really exciting. It is exciting, the prospect of starting a new business, whether it's your first or your second or your third, it's exciting, but I just can't overemphasize, there are so many options out there. Even if you have a good idea, the chance of you finding the best idea of all the options the first time is kind of low. I mean, so go through this process, make sure that you're using your time and your money in the most wise way. and people sometimes get into franchises that they're so excited about and they don't do well. And then a lot of them never go back to business ownership again. That's it. They just feel like, oh, I didn't make it as a business owner. Oh, I didn't make it as a franchisee. That a lot of times, is avoidable. So, that's why, again, I just can't overemphasize the importance of taking a step back and going through all of these steps to find really the best one for you that's available near you, uses your skill set and all of the other things that we discussed.
Okay, Heather Fay from SBDC. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this opportunity again to collaborate, and for Heather, there's so many nuggets. I was trying to write down as quickly as possible. There was just so many great words of wisdom, and like Romaine said, things to get excited about. And thank you for the opportunity to collaborate with you. And we're all in this together, as Heather mentioned when she was presenting. There's ecosystem partners here that our services are at no charge to you for confidential advising. And we're grateful and we collaborate with Romaine on lots of different opportunities. But my brain is like slurring with all these different things that you shared, Heather, things that I hadn't even thought about, even from an advisor's perspective. So thank you for sharing and feeding the curiosity for all of us and encouraging us to explore. And I just had no idea all the different franchises. And I'm curious if you would dig in just a little bit further on the regulations for different franchises and where they're going. If someone is looking for, I want to open X franchise, are there things in their research that they, where would they go to find some of that information? That way they're not going down a path that is just of no return for them.
Well, there are some resources on the SBA website. There's also some resources on the International Franchise Association website. The problem is, there's a lot out there. It's, again, it's kind of a little bit like finding a needle in the haystack. So my best advice is to talk to somebody who knows this industry really well, whether it's me or somebody else, I don't care, but somebody who really knows not just who's out there, but they should really know who's out there, but who's actually doing well. As I was saying before, I meet with companies. I think I met with over 100 companies about 2 weeks ago. How did I do that? Well, my FranNet sets up these meetings for me. They schedule everything for me. So, and I'm grilling them. I'm like, I've got my deposition hat jean on from my old attorney days, and I'm going, well, how do you know that, and how are you outperforming your competition? And they're answering, or they're not answering. And so I'm taking notes. And I also, because I've been doing this so long, I have clients who have been in a lot of these businesses at this point. So I hear from them. I stay in touch, not all of my clients, but a lot of them, we stay in touch. And I hear from them, what's working, what's not working, what the struggles are. What should you know that doesn't typically come up during your calls with franchisees? So it's you have to talk to somebody who knows how to research, what to look out for, but also really knows the industry in some way. You really have to. There's a lot of marketing information out there. Sometimes people go to franchise shows, but it's hard because when I went to the franchise shows, and I've had a booth a couple of times, it's a hard couple of days, but I've done it. I've done this franchise show thing. I like the ones that are giving out free food, but again, opening up a restaurant it's not a retirement job. It's not for everyone. It's a lot of hours. It's second most expensive category in franchising. But if you're going to a franchise show, what are you going to be the most excited about is the restaurant franchise giving out free food. But that is not how to pick a franchise. So you have to kind of filter through all of the noise. And like I said, the best way is really to start with what you're looking for. And then try to find a franchise that does all of that, or at least most of that.
Super. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I would like to thank all the attendees, and we will be doing this again, hopefully next couple of months, and I will be sending out when it is, where it is, how we will go, but most probably it will be webinar. This webinar is also recorded, and you will get the recording of it. And if you have any questions, please reach out to FriendNet, Roanoke SBDC, or Virginia Small Business Supply Diversity. We are here to help you. If I don't know anything, we have resources. I can send you to the next partner. So we are trying to build a community where you don't like go here and there and do not like understand what's going on in the state. So we all are together. If even you contact one person, he will connect you to the next one where you have to go, or you will get the information from. Heather, both of you, thank you so much. Attendees, thank you so much, and have a good day.